Hello, everyone. Welcome to ABRSM Grade 4 Rudiment of Music class. My name is Lotana Ernest, and this day we'll be looking at Lesson 10 Technical Names of Notes in Diatonic Scales. Our learning outcomes are very short and simple, understanding what diatonic scales are, and then we identify the degree names of diatonic scales. So let's start with what are diatonic scales? Diatonic scales are, in another words, you can call them heptatonic, a heptatonic scale. When you talk about hepta is seven. So heptatonic means seven note scale, a scale that is made up of seven notes. And out of those seven notes, we have five tones and two semitones within an octave that makes up that scale. So note that. So when you talk about any note that's any scale that has seven notes, and you have five tones and two semitones within an octave. And when you talk about an octave now, you are including the the first note as the upper note, the eighth note now to form an octave. So you have five tones and two semitones, and that gives you a diatonic scale. One thing I want you to know is that all major scales that we've considered so far are diatonic scales. So note that, because all major scales, whatever major scales they are, they they are seven notes. For example, C major, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, seven. And then when you look at it, you have five tones and two semitones. So you go from C to C. All minor scales that we've also considered are diatonic scales, because all minor scales are made up of seven notes, whether it's harmonic or melodic minor. So let's also note that. So we're talking about diatonic scales, all major scales, all minor scales are diatonic scales. Now, this is different from chromatic scales. I'm sure you've done chromatic scales a few weeks back, where you kind of look at 12 notes, and each of those notes are all semitones. The octave in each of those octaves are made up of purely semitones and no tones. So this is different from it's like the opposite of chromatic scale. Now let's now go to the degree names of the notes in this diatonic scale. So I'll be looking at each of these degree names, and I'll be giving you a brief explanation on why they are named that way. I know you've done this in grade one, but let's look at it a little bit. I have an in-depth study into it this time. So I'm not going to, so we have, remember we talked about seven notes. So you have the first note, the second note, or what you call the degree. We use degree. First degree, second degree, third degree, fourth degree, fifth degree, sixth degree, and then you have a repetition of the first degree, which is the eighth degree. So what you call the first degree, or the first note in a diatonic scale, the first degree is the tonic, the second is the supertonic, as you can see. The third is the mediant, then the fourth, the subdominant, then the fifth, the dominant, then the sixth, the submediant, the seventh, the leading note, and then the eighth is the upper tonic, which is just a repetition of the octave differential of the first tonic. All right, now let's talk about the tonic, the first. So in a scale, the first degree, which is known as the tonic, is like the most important note in that scale, because it's the key note. It is the tonic, the degree, the note that tells you what the key of the music is. So if you have a scale of C major, for example, the tonic is C, the first note C. So that first note tells you that the music or the scale is C major, because it's just like the head of the family. So it tells you the music of the kid, and it tells you the pitch, the basic pitch. Why we say it's the basic pitch is because if you have a bass octave, I mean a bass clef or a bass part, most times the bass part will end on the tonic. So sometimes, even if you don't know what the tonic of a song, of a music is, you listen to the bass part, You just wait to see where the bass part ends. Most times it will end on the tonic. So that's why we say it's the notes where in which the bass part ends most of the time, the ending bass note. So that's why we say the tonic, the tonic. Tonic means the key notes, the principal note, the music key, the basic pitch. Then the next note I want to talk about is the dominant. Let's go to the fifths. The dominant. Now, the dominant is also as important as the tonic. In music, the dominant and the tonic are two very important key notes. Because why do we say it's dominant? Because it dominates the music. It has a dominating domino effect. It enhances the harmony. It has a special relationship between the tonic and the median and the dominant because it is five notes above the tonic. So you have one, two, three, four, five. The fifth, it is five notes above the tonic. So that relationship between the first and the fifth is very important in harmony. You rarely do any song without going from the first to the fifth or the fifth to the first, without using whether it's the fifth triad or the fifth chord or the fifth or whatever it is, the relation, so that relationship is there. So it dominates the music, you understand? So that's why we call it the dominant uh, degree. The other one I want to talk about is the leading notes, which is the seventh. See, I'm not taking them one by one. I'm kind of looking at them in the order of importance, right? So I'm not looking at them kind of chronologically, but rather in the order of importance. So we looked at the first, the fifth, now the seventh. The seventh degree, which is the leading note. Why do we call it the leading note? Because it leads naturally to the tonic. So it's incomplete. It's like it just, you can't, you rarely end a song on the leading note. That's why I say leading. It leads to the tonic. All right. And it is always a major seventh on a scale. So if you have your scale, whatever diatonic scale you have, it is always the seventh note, the major seventh. Okay. We've done all those major seventh, major sixth, the relationship in terms of interval between the tonic and each of the degree. So between the tonic and the leading note is a major seventh of a degree. All right. Whether it is major seventh of a scale. But the exception there is the descending scale of a melodic minor. The descending scale of a melodic minor. Because in the descending scale of a melodic minor, you have to now remove the raised seventh. The raised seventh. Because actually the relationship between the leading note and the upper tonic is always a semitone. So it's like you go from B to C. In a scale of C major, you have B as the leading note, and then you have C leading to C. So between B and C is a semitone. The same thing if you're on A minor, you have A as the leading note, and then you have the raised seventh, which is G sharp, all right, as the sixth, as the seventh note. So that G sharp, which is the seventh note, will now lead you to A minor. All right. So but when you are descending from A melodic minor, you now have that G sharp no longer be there. So you have A, G. So you now have a minor seventh. So you no longer have a semitone between the leading note and the upper tonic. All right, because now you are descending in a melodic minor. That sharpened seventh, raised seventh is no longer there. So you now have what you call a lowered or flattened leading note. So it means that between the upper tonic and the leading note, instead of having a semitone, you now have a tone because you have removed the raised seven that ought to be there while you are descending in a melodic minor. So the leading note is equally very important because it leads you naturally. It's like you are singing do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Once you hear ti, naturally you want to go to do. So that's the idea. Now let's go to the mediant. The mediant is the third degree, and the word mediant in Latin means middle. It's simply called mediant because it is the middle note between the tonic and the dominant. You see, between 1 and 5, 3 is the middle. So whatever degree is on the whatever degree is the third degree is the median, the middle note. So that's why there is nothing special, just because it's sitting in the middle position between the first and the fifth note. The submediant is the other way around. That's the sixth note. Now we're looking at the sixth degree of a diatonic scale. The submediant is the other way around. So you see, it's the mirror image of the mediant. What do I mean by the mirror image? Remember, uh, between the tonic and the mediant, you have one, two, three. You get to the mediant. Now, if you count
In the same way, three notes below the tonic, you get the submediant, so the sixth. So if you put the tonic in the center, three notes to the right or up, three notes to the right or three notes upward, you get to this mediant, the third note. Three notes backwards or downwards, you get the submediant. So that's just the reason why it's called submediant. Submediant. So it's the same interval between, not the same interval now, let me not use that word, but the same number of notes between the tonic and the mediant and the tonic and the submediant. We would or then go to the subdominant. It's just the same explanation like what I did in the submediant. The subdominant, if you look at the relationship between the tonic and the dominant, it's the dominant is five notes above the tonic. The subdominant is the other way around, the mirror image, five notes below the tonic. So the fourth degree, if you count from the back, you will get to the fourth degree five steps backward, while you will get to the fifth degree, the dominant, five steps forward. So if you put the tonic at the front in the center, you move five notes forward, you get the dominant, you move five notes backward, you get the subdominant. And the upper tonic is just the tonic duplicated in an upper level. So it's still the same tonic, but now on an upper pitch, higher pitch. That's why you call it the upper tonic. So it's like the eighth degree, but we don't can either say the eighth degree or you say the upper tonic. And that brings us to the end of today's class. Our assignment is exercise 5, page 19. Please try to get your hands on these assignments and submit them. And if you have any question, please feel free to pop them into the chat and we'll reach out to you. Until I see you again next time, God bless you.